The whole idea about kimchi is that you want to wash your veggie, and then the key is this. You've got to actually use salt. And you've got to let it sit there. That's the key I find, is you got to let it sit there soaking in the salt. And what it does is it's kind of like you're making your own brine, you know what I mean? And then from there, you cut it up, you put in your garlic, a little bit of red pepper. Koreans like red pepper, so we use a Korean style red pepper in there, some ginger, and then we put it all together in a glass jar. And that's basically it.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Mike Mutzel here with HighIntensityHealth.com. Thank you so much for tuning in. Today, we're going to learn about how the gut is related to environmental allergies and other food sensitivities with Dr. Susanne Bennett. She's the author of the 7-Day Allergy Makeover. She's a chiropractic physician, and she has a great personal story that she's going to share with us about how she really got into this field of allergies. And now she treats and helps clients all throughout the world and patients overcome allergies and belly fat and all kinds of different health issues. So, Dr. Susanne, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks so much for having me, Mike. I love being here and really, really enjoy your work and what you're doing for the world.
Thank you so much. Yeah, as we can tell, our listeners can tell, your energy is contagious. So that's how I found you online. And I'm like, we have to do a podcast together because you're so animated and energetic and passionate. So thanks for sharing that energy with us. And let's kind of talk about your backstory before we dive into allergies and belly fat. You have a personal story I'd love for you to share with us about how you got into, specializing in helping people overcome allergies.
Well, I've been practicing for 26 years now, so a long time, Mike. But I wasn't always an allergy expert or an environmental expert. I started with actually sports medicine. And then when my son was born, Cody, way back when in the early 90s, everything's just kind of like changed. I mean, my life changed. My son's life, of course, at a very, very young age, at about 3 months old, he started having allergies, runny nose, the typical stuff that you might see, and even a little bit of the skin problems and like eczema and itchy skin, hives, and just got deeper and worse. I mean, it just got worse and worse as the months went on. And such a young age, he was so sick. And it got really bad to the point where he had asthmatic issues and respiratory distress issues that we actually had to carry an EpiPen. An EpiPen is, a lot of people know what it is, but it is an injectable device that a medical doctor gives you so that once you, a child or you are having allergic reactions, you literally have to open up your airways because the anaphylactic reactions is choking you and basically swelling of the throat, etc. So we had to carry that because he had severe allergies. It just got worse and worse. And once he was like a year and a half, that was really when the straw that broke the camel's back for me, is that he had a vaccine reaction, and the vaccine was an MMR and chickenpox vaccine. And at the time, when you're your mother, you just want to do the best for your child. And I got a ton of vaccines. My husband got a ton of vaccines. So we never thought that a vaccine would really affect Cody this bad. But what ended up happening was that he ended up getting cerebellar meningitis and he stopped walking for weeks. He couldn't walk anymore. And that was the beginning of like, oh my gosh, I have to save my son's life. Otherwise, he's definitely going to have a lot worse problems going down the line. He's just so young. And that's when I discovered all about allergies, natural allergies, by begging American Academy of Environmental Medicine. This was 1996, way back when, and I begged them to let me be part of their program. It's a medical program, postgraduate work. I was the only chiropractor that went to that course back in Topeka, Kansas. I won't ever forget it because I learned so much information that I didn't know, that my doctors didn't know. Pediatricians knew nothing about allergies back then. So what I did was I basically went back to school and I became an allergy expert, became a medical detective in a sense, because it really takes a lot of energy of figuring out what's going on with what you're eating, what your environment looks like, what you're putting into your child and on your skin and whatnot. And that's what helped, with the help of the doctors. I really love Dr. Doris Rapp. She's a queen of pediatric allergies. Dr. William Rada is another mentor of mine who has a big allergy environmental clinic in Texas. So these are the people that I learned from. And then I basically changed my sports medicine practice. I had a huge sports medicine practice in Los Angeles, in Westwood, and totally changed it in like overnight. It was crazy because if you think about it, everyone has allergies. All athletes have allergies, sports people. So I basically changed my practice from sports medicine to allergy specialty, natural allergy medicine. And since then, I've been doing allergy work. And I even wrote the book, The 7-Day Allergy Makeover, that was published last year. That book is a wonderful, just a gathering of all the information that I put together for my son and for all my patients. It's all in that one book. And sure, I do a lot of other things like supplements and things like that to even take you to another notch. But in that book, I don't talk much about supplements. It's really about what you can do about your food, what you put into your body, what your environment looks like, right? And as well as even water and the air you're breathing, the living environment, the kitchen, of course. The kitchen is loaded with allergens, as well as things that we apply to our skin. I have a full chapter on what to do about things that you actually put on your skin and how to clean your skin. We don't know how to clean the skin very well, in America. So I teach that in that book.
Love it. Yeah, the book's great. But before we talk about your tenets of the book, how's Cody doing? I would love to know.
Oh my gosh. Thank you for asking. I should say that by the time he was 3.5 years old, he was completely free of all allergies, including anaphylactic reactions. And I learned so much about how what we were giving him food-wise, as well as the food, as it was a kitchenware, things that I was feeding him with. When he was like 4 or 5 months, that's when we all start to give our babies baby food, right? That was a huge telltale sign for my son. My son, at that time, he was eating, and I was using a little stainless steel spoon, just like baby spoons. And what I found out after these rashes just wouldn't go away. He had this big patch under his chin, an eczema patch, never went away. The doctors would give us cortisone creams. And sure it did. But as soon as I stopped doing the cream, it'd come right back. So what I did was, of course, I shaved off his head. Poor little one. Shaved all his hair off and sent out a hair analysis, toxic metal hair analysis at Doctor's Data. A lot of people, you probably know about Doctor's Data. Is probably my favorite when it comes to hair analysis and toxic metal analysis. So I sent it out, and sure enough, he was super high in nickel, arsenic, and mercury. A little kid, 5 months old. Like, what are you thinking? Like, where does this child get? Well, guess where it came from? That's when I was nursing him full time, of course, and he was getting it from me. He was already having so much toxins going into his body because I was nursing him because I was toxic. And I didn't say anything. I mean, and another factor that he also had was that he had what's called fetal metal syndrome. And when I was when I was pregnant back in the early 90s, nobody talked about fish being such a terrible high mercury content food. And I ate a ton of tuna fish. I worked all the way through until 2 weeks before my delivery. And I needed that protein. And it was an easy protein for me to have. Love tuna, at least 4 to 5 times a week. I mean, a lot of tuna. And that was another reason why he was born with already a toxic burden in his body.
Wow. Gosh, that's such a great story.
But now,
in the sense that you learned.
Let me share. After, he 3.5, he was totally cured of all the allergies. And of course, now he's 20. So he's much older now and he's doing beautifully. So thank you for asking that.
Absolutely. My pleasure. Well, I brought up a lot of points that I wanted to kind of talk about, and maybe you can go back to your days really treating a lot of athletes. We have a lot of athletes, Dr. Susanne, that listen to the show. So, and a lot of athletes have, allergy issues. I mean, not just athletes, but everyone. And I remember I was doing a lot of competitive elite bike racing in Colorado and would just go on these bike rides for 3 to 6 hours a day, training a lot. And I would sneeze like the entire time. And it was the most uncomfortable experience. And incidentally, too, since you brought it up, my heavy metals were off the charts from inhaling diesel fuel exhaust while being out in the roads a lot. So I guess, why do allergies, maybe we'll talk about, 2 components. What do the metals have to do with allergies? Maybe one. And then number 2, why do athletes have so many allergies?
Well, I think it's not just athletes. I think it's pretty much everyone have a lot of allergies. And my definition of allergies is a lot broader than the medical. Let me talk about the conventional medical route. When medical doctors talk about allergies, they talk about the IgE response. That's the immediate allergic reactions where you have the histamine and basophil degranulation and where you literally have the itching, the runny nose, the sneezing, just like what you described. But we also have allergies that are more of the that's more irritating, like things that are called hidden allergies. We have headaches, we've got gut issues, we've got acid reflux, we've got joint pain, we've got sleeping issues, insomnia, anxiety. These are all, to me, hidden allergies. My definition of allergies is much broader. So I really think we all have some of these problems. Now, about athletes, the truth of the matter is, you're absolutely right. You are overloaded. So you had more toxins in your body. So your toxic burden is much higher. Your toxic burden is much higher than the average person, possibly because you're out there 3-4 hours training, right? You're riding, you're cycling. A lot of triathletes do this. And I don't know if that's what the type of did you say you were a triathlete?
No, just road cycling. I can't road run cycling. Or swim very well, so.
Right. But, there's the pollution is so loaded with toxins. And you got to remember, any kind of pollution that we are absorbing through our lungs, the lung, although it is a filtering mechanism, it doesn't get rid of it quickly. We cannot detox through the lungs very quickly. There's a few supplements that are used, such as glutathione, NAC, and acetylcysteine, that will help your lungs. I love bamboo extract, really helps your lungs. And of course, vitamin A. But I'll tell you, the lungs are one tissues that's really difficult to drain out. And that's part of the reason why we've got more and more young people getting lung cancer. I don't know if you're familiar with lung cancer, but the lung cancer these days are so off the charts. One of my dear friends actually just got diagnosed with stage 3 lung cancer, and he is a true athlete. I mean, he's one of the top athletes that I know here in Los Angeles, but look at what happens, So why are these people getting all this? And it's because of our inability to filter out these toxins. And the mercury that you talked about, that you had mercury toxicity, that's one of the hardest. And one of the factors, not just from the fact that, it's hard to get out of our lungs, but we have I'd say more than 25%. I mean, 40% of us have these genetic defects, and these genetic defects called methylation issues, specific ones that does not allow us to detox metals. That's really one of the key things that I've learned about my son, Cody, why he had so much metals in his body, why he couldn't dump it out very well. And it was because he has the bad genes. I mean, it's just what can we say? A lot of us have it. A lot of us have these these methylation genetic patterns. And I have it as well. So did my husband, and my son got the brunt of it. So that's the reason why athletes have higher levels. Now, I love about athletes is that you guys are all fabulous. I'm an athlete too, so I can say this, is that we're all great sweaters. We're great excretors. We sweat a lot. And that's really one of the key ways to get rid of the toxins. Your skin is your largest organ that I find I use quite a bit. Not only do I have it from exercise and sweating as you can, but I actually use the sauna, far infrared sauna, and detoxing through the skin, because I find the skin is the fastest way to get rid of heavy metals. People don't know that. But after about 105 degree temperature in a sauna, 105 degree, you're going to dump out and vaporize the mercury out of your body, out of your fat stores.
Love it. Yeah. And athletes generally are leaner than sedentary people. And we know that these toxins are also stored in fat cells. So it's another reason to get out there and get active and stay lean so that your total body burden of toxins is lower. But so let's kind of talk about why allergies exist. And I just want to point out an example. We know that breastfeeding for the first, 2 years of life is a, great way to prevent allergies. But then, you mentioned the heavy metals in your own breast milk. So what advice, maybe let's start from the bottom, someone's planning on having kids and they want to prevent allergies and autoimmunity. What sort of preventative tips would they implement in their life for pre-pregnancy planning? And then what can we do to our kids? And then where do we start with adults?
Absolutely. First of all, I really believe in the most natural way of delivering a baby is to do it vaginally. Why? That's where we get our native bioflora, our native microbiome. We get it from our mothers. So if our mothers had healthier vaginal bioflora, the health of the vagina, then the babies are actually going to have much better chance of reducing allergies. There are studies that show prenatally, if the mother takes probiotics and food food that are high in probiotics, such as kimchi, sauerkraut, pickles, miso, they all have better gut immune factors in their gut, but also their vagina is healthier. And so when the baby comes out head first, what is going through, and of course, what are they going to swallow? The vaginal discharge or vaginal juices in the mother. And that's how we get our first dose of our probiotics, the native. And if, in fact, if the vagina is unhealthy, let's talk about that too. If the mother has high levels of streptococcal B, you've heard of that, is that some mothers have to have antibiotics. Then if with the antibiotics, they end up having a high yeast problem. Well, if the yeast is there, so will the baby. And what do they call it? Thrush. Many, many babies are born. And after a few, 1 or 2 weeks, they start getting this real major overgrowth of the mouth, and it's all sore, irritated. It literally spreads out on the chin. You can see this eczema-like type of oozing stuff going on the chin down into their neck. That is candida overgrowth, yeast overgrowth. So it's really important that the mother prenatally takes good care of their gut health, take probiotics regularly, and then, of course, make sure their vaginal health is very healthy as well. And then number 2, when a baby latches on to the flora, to the breast, that is where the baby also gets the nice bioflora too. Our skin has its own microbiome. It has its own types of bacteria as well as even yeast. So a lot of, mothers, don't wash your breast off, before you latch on. I actually tell people tell mothers to put a little bit of probiotics on the breast so that they can latch on and get some good bacteria. And that's what you want to do. If for any reason, like my son, he was a cesarean baby. And so that means that he didn't have all the good bugs as we would have wanted to. So what I did was I put a little bit of probiotics on the nipple so that when he latched on, it would immediately go through and help him. So I think that was one of the things that you could do post-natally as a parent. And, there's several schools of thought when it comes to the too clean of a baby. You know what I mean by that? Are you familiar with what I'm talking about?
The hygiene hypothesis. Yeah, let's dive into it though.
Yes. Yeah, let's dive a little bit into it because I know that when the child is really sick and they're allergic, we cannot put him into an environment where it's really loaded with bugs and molds and things like that because they will actually react more. But kids that are healthy, that have a really great gut immunity, and their GALT, the gut-associated lymphoid tissue in the gut is healthy, I think that that's a great, great way of living and being with animals, being out there in the dirt, eating the fresh veggies that you grow organically out on, in your environment. But most of the kids that I see right now, I have a big pediatric practice. At least 40% of my practice is little ones. They are really sick. They don't come to me healthy. They come to me sick. So in the beginning of their protocols and their treatments, I really have to maintain what is going on in the environment and clean it up so that we can reduce the inflammation. And once the inflammation is down and the good bioflora has been established, then you can go ahead and start exposing them more because biodiversity of the gut is super important. If you've ever do you ever work with diagnostics? I used to use Metametrics. I still call them Metametrics, but Genova Diagnostics. Do you use that company at all?
I don't personally, but I have had my stool tested. It was Genova. I did the old culture test, but we do talk about that on the show. So yeah, I would love to hear your perspective on, gut bacterial diversity and maybe some of the, metabolites, fecal metabolites, short chain fatty acids, and or different microbial shifts that you look at and how you treat that with food and supplements. That'd be a great place to go.
Yeah, with most of my kids, I have cases where infants, newborns, 2 weeks old, they can't even have a bowel movement. That's a full week that they've got to go without having a bowel movement. And that's really, really sad. And that's dangerous for a child at that age, And so every one of my kids, whether they have nasal allergies, respiratory allergies, or gut allergies, I actually do a stool testing. And it's just not my kids, adults as well. Stool testing is my way of looking at a lot of things, because you'll be surprised. You'll be surprised. Little ones might have excessive amounts of bacteria that you don't want. They may have yeast infections like we just talked about. And with little kids, I don't see a lot of parasites unless they've been exposed to quite a bit of animals, or they are drinking. And I'm talking about toddlers. If they drink over at their schools, right from the faucet and things like that, because there are bugs in our water and tap water that can cause harm in the gut. And so there's a lot you can see in the Genova testing. What I liked about Metametrics is that now Genova bought Metametrics, and it's called the GI Effects Kit, GI Effects Testing. That's the one that I use with Genova. And what I love about that is that they look at the different PCR, meaning like the bacterial, it's the actual protein SNPs that they can read the DNA. So it gives us some really great information, the DNA. They haven't re-implemented the parasitic part, and I'm hoping that they'll do that, because I've found incredible amounts of parasites in America. You'll be shocked. I've seen strongyloides, which is a threadworm that can migrate up into the brain, but majority of the time it causes what's called inflammation in the gut. A lot of pinworms, Nicator americanus, which is a hookworm, lumbricoides. I'm a big fan of looking at parasites, because when I was growing up, I'm Korean, Mike, and when I was growing up in Seoul, Korea, my brother, when he was 8 years old, sat on the toilet. He was screaming, and here comes a live worm, a living worm out of his bottom. And I never got grossed out. I actually got excited, wanting to see what is going on. Oh my God, I can't believe we have living worms inside us. So when I went to UCLA and I was a kinesiology major there, I was the only kinesiology major who was in the postgraduate work in public health in the parasitology department. I got fascinated. I was always fascinated about little things like that. Gross things I like. Yeah, that's the way it goes. And so when I took these courses, I'm like, wow, we have a ton of parasites in this country, a ton. So don't be surprised, when the doctor says, we got to look for parasites, everyone. Well, it's important because that is one of the reasons why we've got leaky gut syndrome and toxic effects on our gut.
Mm-hmm. Gosh, I love it. There's so much that I want to talk to you about, but I love Seoul, Korea. I was there last November, and it was one of my favorite cities that I've been to. And here's the reason why. We had kimchi before and after every single meal. And I've said this on the show. People are probably annoyed of hearing me about this, but the only overweight people that I saw in Seoul and their surrounding areas were Americans that were there for traveling, or Europeans, and children. And so we can kind of talk about weaving childhood obesity with this allergy, prevalence that we're seeing throughout America, particularly in children. And wanted to kind of reinforce something that you hit on, and we'll talk about this a little bit more, but this educating the immune system. So people might be wondering, why does it matter if you have dogs, for children growing up? And like you said, being exposed to different, don't clean the nipple and breast when you're breastfeeding, because all those microbes are educating this young, naive immune system. And so individuals that we were with in Korea believe that the lack of homemade kimchi is contributing to a reduced bacterial diversity in the gut microbiome and reduced intake of fermentable fibers. And so that's why, at least according to these elders who were medical doctors in Korea, think that there's an increase in childhood obesity, in addition to all the McDonald's and Burger King and all the Western fast food restaurants that are moving in there. So maybe let's talk about fermented foods, and what did you do at home, being South Korean?
Well, I eat kimchi just about every day, Mike, and I have a kimchi refrigerator in the garage, a complete separate kimchi refrigerator. Because if anyone's had kimchi, is very strong. There's a very strong taste because we put a ton of garlic in it, and the process of fermentation. Basically, it has a gas producing. Right, you open a bottle of kimchi that's just been sitting there, and for the first time, they're just bubbling of gas. And to me, it's like, oh, my favorite smell. But to a lot of people, it's not. And so in my garage, and I'm not married to a Korean man. And George, although he adores me, he just doesn't like the smell of it. So we have a kimchi refrigerator. And what I found, I mean, I've been eating kimchi my whole life, many, many, many years. And what I do is I eat different kinds of kimchi because there's cabbage kimchi that most people like to eat. But cabbage also has these types of fermentable carbohydrates. So a lot of people, when they eat kimchi, they're like, I get really gassy. Right? I get really gassy and it's gurgling in there. So there's different kinds of kimchis. I eat a lot of mustard green kimchi, and you can get that in Korean stores in the Korean market here in LA. They literally sell mustard greens, a lot of it. And then I like also radish roots, radish tops, and that's also another part, as well as cucumber kimchi, like pickles, but we eat it with a lot of spices in it. Koreans love spicy foods and a lot of ginger and garlic, and we all know that ginger is an awesome root to reduce inflammation and help even stabilization of your blood sugar level. So for me, I eat all sorts of different. They're like a variety. And I don't know if did you go to the kimchi museum in Korea? Did you get a chance to go there?
We didn't. It was a whirlwind of 3 days, and we, ate these elaborate meals like breakfast, lunch, dinner. It was amazing. I was like gained 10 pounds, but it was all fun. But we did not go to the kimchi museum, but we had all kinds of kimchi. We went to, in the old part of town where I think it's a palace. I don't know. It's kind of up and over a hill on the north side, I believe. I went to some really, historical kind of traditional South Korean restaurants and had these great, meals. And so all kinds of different kimchi, but we didn't go to the museum.
Well, there's hundreds of different kinds of kimchis. It really is. And there's so many different ways of making it. If anyone wants to learn how to make it, there's a great Korean lady on YouTube. Her name is Mangchi, and Maanchi, I believe. And you go there and she just teaches you all the different styles. I highly recommend. But I learned it from my own mom. My mom is such the best way of making kimchi. And the reason why you want to make your own is because the ones that you see at some of the Korean stores is it's loaded with MSG, loaded. And that's one of the things that you don't want to have. And some of it is even really, really high in sodium and sugar. They put some Korean companies, that when they make it, they put literally fructose, high fructose corn syrup in it. And so to me, that's not the way to make kimchi. It doesn't make sense. You make it yourself. And when you make it yourself, it's so easy to make. And maybe one day you'll have your own kimchi refrigerator.
I would love to. I know. So let's talk about making kimchi. But before we do, for folks that might run out and buy it, I want to make sure that everyone is looking at the labels, because I was really disappointed. There's a great Asian superstore here called Wajimaya in Seattle. That's where I live. And I thought for sure that I could get some really, genuine kimchi there. And every single bottle, just as you said, Dr. Susanne, there was MSG, high fructose corn syrup, a lot of sugar, added flavorings and dyes. And I was so disappointed I couldn't find one that didn't have that. Now, I know at Whole Foods there's some, kind of like, I think out of Southern California, some really kind of raw brands you can buy. It's a little expensive, but walk us through for the kimchi kind of novices here. What can we do? How do we start, in addition to that video that you recommended on YouTube?
Well, the whole idea about kimchi is that you want to wash your veggie. Let's say that it's for cucumber or even cabbage, whatever style you want to make, you got to wash it really well. And then the key is this, you've got to actually use salt. Salt. There's a Korean type of salt that's very, very rough. It's not like tiny little beads of salt. It's like chunks of salt, and you've got to let it sit there. That's the key I find, is you got to let it sit there soaking in the salt. And what it does is it's kind of like you're making your own brine. You know what I mean? And then from there, you cut it up, you put in your garlic, a little bit of the red pepper. Koreans like red pepper, so we use a Korean style red pepper in there. Some ginger, and I like these. Do you know what chives are? And there's a special kind of chive, Korean chive, and I use that. They're like called garlic tops. The garlic greens, and then we put it all together in a glass jar. And that's basically it. You stuff it, and it's got to be enough liquid to cover it a little bit. And you just stuff it. Just keep on pounding it all down. And I only use jar, everyone. If you notice that, I'm like, often you'll find it's made in plastic containers. Who wants plastic? We don't want, that's petroleum-based product. I don't want to promote plastic as well. I have everything in my house is all glass oriented. So glass container, and it doesn't have to be big. And you can even use just the ones that, close it up on the top. I don't use the one where it actually, I don't know what they're called, but they're glass with those little metal things that you hook on.
Sure.
It needs to gas, take the gas out a little, because it can really get increased amount of gas production from the fermentation. So basically I would get the ones that just screw on the top, and then I leave it out in the garage, and I leave it out for a little while, like 2 to 3 days. You just got to cure it a little bit, and then you try it. For me, I like kimchi that's just about ripe, and you can tell because it doesn't feel fresh. It doesn't taste fresh. There's a sourness to it, and then that's when I just go crazy. Bring it out. And then I pop it in the refrigerator, because again, it can go get fermented way too fast. So what I do is I pop in the refrigerator, and I might eat that kimchi, and it depends on how much I make. Probably a good 2 months. Good 2 months. And kimchi, to me, when it's older, the more fermented it is. And don't throw out the kimchi juice. The kimchi juice is loaded with the probiotics, loaded with the bacteria that your body wants. That's where you get the biodiversity in the gut. Yes, we want to take probiotics if you've had antibiotics and whatnot, but I find that you just have it in kimchi. It's awesome. It's really awesome.
Gosh, that's great. So yeah, let's kind of weave this back to allergies. I love these topics, but so we want to do natural birthing. We want to maybe detox before pregnancy if we can, avoid heavy metals exposure for mothers and children, breastfeed and so forth, eat fermented foods. And you mentioned earlier that you like to put out the fire, put out the inflammation, then fix the gut. So kind of talk us through that and some of the tenets of your book so people can kind of, improve their own immune system and reduce the prevalence of allergies.
Everyone, whether they've got headaches or respiratory allergies, nasal congestion, skin allergies, allergies, in fact, in the bladder. A lot of people come in with interstitial cystitis, IC, and I find all of that. Every one of them, I put them through an allergenic-free diet, allergy-free diet, inflammatory, low inflammatory food diet. And what does that it contained there is mainly the ones that a lot of people talk about, gluten-free, dairy-free. In my book, I talk about the 7 foods. So gluten, dairy, sugar, of course, fungus. Now, not a lot of people talk about fungus in our foods. And you might think, okay, mushrooms are fungus, but where else do I get fungus? Well, you can get fungus in your vegetables, your salads, when you go out at restaurants, in the dried fruits that we eat, in the corn that we eat, in grains, and in all forms of cheese, especially cheese. I mean, people may not know this, but you know how blue cheese is blue? Well, that's made from penicillin roqueforti, and that's why it's called Roquefort cheese. It is a mold that it grows on cheese. And more often than not, you take out a slab of cheese out of your refrigerator, and sure, there's a little green growing there. So what do? You cut it off, and then you start eating the good stuff. Well, what you're doing is you're contaminating your body with the mold. So for me, I find that we've got to control what you're putting into your body first. And that's the fastest way to reduce allergies, fastest way to reduce all your headaches and the hidden allergies I call headaches, right? Joint pain, insomnia, anxiety. People have anxiety and they get agitation. They can't sleep at night. And it's because after they've had a meal of, let's say, a pizza. Well, did you know that in casein, which is a protein of the dairy, it's a neurotoxin. It literally affects your brain. It's an excitotoxin. And you're wondering, why can't I go to bed and I'm all angst out? And it's because of food that you're eating. So by removing all of the allergenic foods, after fungus, I really want you to look at alcohol. This is a hard thing for people to, literally ingest is alcohol, because we love it. We're social community. Americans love their wine and beer and everything that's out on the news about, you got to have your wine, every day so that it can help you with your resveratrol. Well, you're not getting enough resveratrol in that one glass of wine, everyone. So what do I suggest? You could take a resveratrol supplement. And that's how I find that you can get your polyphenols that will help you with your heart, that will help you with preventing diseases in the future and possible cancers, right? So alcohol is, just to let you know, it is a mycotoxin. Mycotoxin are toxins produced by fermentation again. And the more toxic ones are the beers and the wines. And so alcohol. And then the two that a lot of children that I see are sensitive to are eggs and as well as peanuts. Peanuts, it's really not even a nut, it's a legume. And the reason why there's so much aflatoxin and possible mold contamination is because it's a pod. In the pod, when you pick it, it's wet. But when they go ahead and dry it so that you can get that roasted, or get the raw peanut out, that mold starts to grow inside the pod. Other nut that I recommend people not to have is cashews. Cashews can also be very moldy in addition to pistachios. So you know what? Got to start from the foods. I give my patients a full list of foods, what to eat, what not to eat. And by doing that, immediately within 5-6 days, you start to reduce your symptoms of inflammation. Why? Because it takes 4 days for the allergen of food, nutrients, toxins, all to dissipate. Whatever you're reacting to. So let's say you ate pizza one day. It takes 4 days for all of that allergenic effect to calm down. Some people, it won't calm down because 3 days later, they're going to have, let's say, they have a gluten sandwich, a sandwich, and that can cause more inflammation. So you're constantly allergic to one thing or another. So food is the fastest way to get rid of that inflammation. And once you get rid of that inflammation in the gut, things start to calm down. Your immunity start to say, oh my God, I'm so happy. Things are better. And then they can start working better. You have better bowel movements in your gut. Not just that, when you feed your body healthier foods, your gut bioflora, the microbiome, which is what's partly eating that food, helping you extract those minerals, nutrients in that food, they're going to work better. Not just that, you're going to reduce the bad bacteria, the yeast that grow in the gut when you've got too much sugar in your diet. And if you start to have reduced inflammation, guess what? Your ability to heal that leaky gut goes down, your enzyme production goes up, and you'll start to digest your foods better. So if you get digested foods, you have less going down into the larger intestine, which causes then, of course, if you have undigested food, you have more overgrowth of bugs that are down there. So it all works together. You've got to start from what you're putting into the body.
Mm-hmm. Gosh, beautifully said. So let's kind of tackle alcohol because I know Koreans tend to enjoy their alcohol, and I'll share a story with you. It started to rain when we were walking around in Seoul, and so what did we do? Of course, we went inside and started drinking makgeolli, which is like sake in Korea. So I thought that was pretty interesting. So I think a lot of people are disappointed to hear that alcohol is off the list, but we all know that, at least most of us, when we drink alcohol, generally, you don't feel that well the next morning. And that's not just something to ignore, that headache or that sneezing or those allergies. My allergies totally kick up and I'll sneeze for like an hour straight after I drink wine in the next day. So why is alcohol so bad? Is it changing our gut microbiome? Is it inflammatory? Is it the mycotoxins or the combination thereof?
It's everything. It's everything. So like I said earlier, it basically fermentation of sugar, fruit juice, right? Like grapes, fruits, rice. That's what makgeolli. Makgeolli is actually unfermented. Unfiltered. Makgeolli is a very heavy. In Japanese terms, they call it nigori sake, right? Whereas sake is filtered. Well, all of that. Basically, you end up having the mycotoxin. It is a byproduct of fermentation. And that fermentation can actually cause an allergic reaction, histamine release. You mentioned about you get the runny nose. Well, that's the histamine release. So it activates it. Now, in Korean culture, I actually, not just Koreans, but a lot of Asians, we have a problem of digesting alcohol. And the way you can tell is that I turn completely red, like super, super red. Like I had a major sunburn from head to toe. And it's cute because, well, it's not cute, but my son one time comes home and he's all red. And of course, I know that he's been drinking alcohol when he shouldn't be. So, these are things that you see in people. And what's going on? Why was my body so red? It's because of the histamine. And I do not have the alcohol dehydrogenase enzyme. So it's a genetic thing that I don't have to break it down. So then my body can't break down alcohol fast enough. And when it's circulating in your body, you have more inflammatory reactions. It has an effect on your brain. Of course, your judgment. When you have too much alcohol, that ends up having a problem. But what happens the next day is that alcohol is actually broken down in your liver. Phase 1 and it becomes acid aldehyde. And acid aldehyde is the chemical that causes a lot of us the brain fog, the foggy brain, can't think straight. You can't be quick and you're just dragging. Some people even get depression from it, right? And they don't want to even get out of bed and go to work. So there are so many reasons how alcohol can disrupt your body. Not just that. I want to talk about something that people don't realize, that even if you don't drink, and I'm talking about people who are sober, people who don't like to drink alcohol, young children, little ones, they don't drink alcohol, but I find that some of them have what I call auto intoxication or auto brewery. And what that means is that when you eat too much sugar and yeast and moldy foods, what does that create? Fermentation in your gut. You start producing your own ethanol, your own alcohol within yourself. I have a really great story. One of my patients came in and she came in with this big swollen belly. I won't ever forget this. She's really skinny. That kind of skinny fat person type of looking one, really skinny legs, skinny arms. She worked out regularly, but her belly was huge. And she actually smelled, there's a particular smell when someone has alcohol, that's alcohol breath, but it was very sweet smelling, and every time when she came in, I'm thinking, God, this gal is drinking. So I blatantly said, what did you have to drink today? Because I can smell it on your breath. And she goes, I've been sober for 22 years, a long time, and I don't drink, Doc. And what ended up happening was that she was actually making her own alcohol within her own gut. And that was the biggest factor why she was feeling so poor, why she had leaky gut syndrome, because it was disrupting and irritating the gut, why it was so difficult to get rid of her candida, right? Candida and yeast overgrowth. There were so many things. And then, of course, that bloatedness. And once we address to clean it up, and what I use is what's called glucomannan powder. Are you familiar with that, Mike?
No, not so much. So yeah, let's dive into that.
Yeah. Glucomannan is an actual fiber. It's a soluble fiber from the konjac plant. Konjac, it literally is a little plant. It's a tree, and then the big underground is this big old root. It almost looks like a jicama. And the powder is what I use, and you can get it online. Glucomannan powder. I sell it for my practice at my office. And that powder, what I do is I use it to soak up. It's phenomenal for soaking up carbohydrates and sugars. It's also known to absorb cholesterol. So if people have high cholesterol levels, I use that, and I have them put it on their food, make it into a drink and drink it. And when you do that with a drink, and if it's using the powder, you'll see how the powder just becomes like a jello. You want to have enough water. You can't just have a little bit. You got to use a lot of water, and it starts looking kind of like goopy and jello-y. Well, what's going to happen is that glucomannan, when you drink it, it soaks up all the toxins. So I use it quite a bit for cholesterol, like I said, binding to sugars and alcohols. And I also do it for heavy metal toxicity or anything like food poisoning. And it really soaks it. And what it does is it increases the bulk, because it's a soluble fiber. It increases the bulk of the feces of your stool, so you can have great bowel movements.
Love it. That's fantastic. It reminds me maybe of psyllium.
Yeah, a psyllium can be inflammatory. I find that sometimes a lot of psyllium, a little bit is okay, but it can cause a lot of bloating and irritation in the gut. So there's some products that have a little psyllium in it with glucomannan and prune fiber, different kinds of fiber.
Sure. Fantastic. All right. Well, for our listeners that are more curious about this alcohol link with gut imbalances, we did a couple of blog posts on highintensityhealth.com. If you go in the search bar, type in alcohol, a lot of references there on alcohol, how it causes leaky gut, absorption of bacterial particulates. So if you want to dive more into that, you can do so. And also Dave Asprey, who I think Dr. Susanne, we did a podcast, I think it was episode number 63, he talked a lot about the mycotoxins as well. So if you're interested in kind of diving more into that, you have Dr. Suzanne's book and also Dave Asprey's podcast on high intensity highintensityhealth.com. So let's you hinted at that swollen belly syndrome. Before we wrap up and kind of talk about your morning routine and your favorite nutrients, let's talk about the swollen belly. And we've been highlighting on allergies, avoiding the foods and so forth, and increasing bacterial diversity with probiotics and fermented foods. What about that swollen belly in addition to the yeast? What sort of tips do you have to offer? Because we do see that a lot. And a lot of women that are listeners of the show complain about belly fat. So give us your perspective there.
Right. I mean, I call it the swollen belly syndrome. And the way I know about the swollen belly, I mean, I literally took it from the actual condition, which is a parasitic condition of strongyloides overgrowth. Many, many years ago, like I talked about during my parasitology classes, I learned about the swollen belly syndrome. But now in modern times, we don't deal with strongyloides overgrowth and infestation here in America, but we deal with the look of it, again, that big belly, just like I talked about that patient of mine who was like a skinny fat person, and you've got this big belly and you really don't know what to do. Now, the things that I've done for the swollen belly syndrome, basically what that is basically a functional digestive issue, like irritable bowel symptoms. When you've got gas, bloating, diarrhea, constipation, acid reflux, these are all the symptoms that I look for in the swollen belly syndrome, but there's another way I detect it. I've done thousands of patients on this, and basically it's the clinical research I did within my own practice because I see so many of it. And what I found was that when you use a measuring tape, so get out a measuring tape and you measure your waist to hip ratio, not the waist to hip ratio that people look at when they look at the Diabetes Foundation. There are different ways of measuring, but I measure it right at the belly button, Mike. So get that measuring tape right at the belly button. And then the second one is at the hip where your greater trochanter is, or you could just say how the inner leg ends in your groin, your crotch. At that level, that's the hip measurement. And what you want is that waist to hip measurement, the ratio. So waist is divided by hip number. The inches is inches, of course. Then you want for a woman to be 0.8 or below. Or for a man, 0.9 or below. I've done so many research on this with my patients and finding out all the different kinds of gut symptoms and correlating with these numbers. And in my practice, this is what I do for all the people who complain about this swollen belly syndrome. And I measure that out. And anyone who's above 0.8, just a little, let's say, okay, we got to start working on it. And by the way, don't measure after you've had a big meal or a dessert. When you're all full and all that. No, you got to do it in the morning when things are flatter and you've had a really good bowel movement. Let's get all that waste out and then measure and get your true waist to hip ratio. And once you've done that and you figure that out, you know what? You think that you've got, wow, I've got a 1.0. What my measurement is a 1.0, then you got to start thinking about what are the things that's bothering my body. And the first thing, like I said, is you got to get rid of all the food allergies, your food intolerances, all the fermentable foods. Fermentable foods, you know what FODMAPs are, right, Mike? I'm sure you have people on. Yeah, so fermentable foods, all of these allergenic foods that I talk about. It's in my book, The 7-Day Allergy Makeover. And there are, in fact, 39 vegetables and fruit that I actually tell people to stay away from in the beginning phases of trying to get rid of that swollen belly, 39 of them. And you're thinking, that vegetables are supposed to be good for you. And I said, yes, they are. But there are a lot of fermentable carbohydrates that actually in the beginning of you trying to get rid of that swollen belly, it's difficult to manage. So in the beginning of the phase of getting rid of that swollen belly, we got to maintain and reduce those fermentable carbohydrates, because what it's going to do is all the bad bacteria and the fungus that you've got in your gut, you're just basically still feeding it. And to shrink that belly and reduce that inflammation, got to get rid of those foods. So once you do that, and the alcohol and everything that I talked about earlier, that's how you're going to start reducing the swollen belly. Another way, probiotics, love it. So remember I said about kimchi and all that in the beginning, if you want to get rid of it, having cabbage, because cabbage is a fermentable carbohydrate, it has that's in it. So what you don't want is vegetables that actually have all of these fermentable foods in it. Cabbage. There's all these different types of fermentable carbohydrates like monosaccharides, disaccharides, fructooligosaccharides, polyols. And speaking of fructooligosaccharides, if you want to do probiotics, get one that doesn't have FOS in it in the beginning. No FOS, no inulin. We know those are prebiotics, right? Because we want to feed the good bacteria, but I find that those can be really reactive in people. Have you ever heard of people that say, oh my God, when I eat probiotics, I get so bloated, so gurgly, I can't stand it. I'm always having gas, Well, that's because that probiotic has FOS or fermentable carbohydrates like inulin. So in the beginning, get probiotics without those prebiotics and you'll do a lot better. And then number 3, I say you got to have a great bowel movement. I am all for having big bowel movements and at least once a day. It's amazing how many people are constipated in this country. I have had women a week, 2 weeks without having a bowel movement come to my office. And we have to fix it one by one, little by little, figuring out what's the deeper reason. And often, you know what? It's actually emotional. A lot of the emotions and stresses that we deal with. And if you think about it, when you're stressed out, then you're in the sympathetic dominant state and you're just totally like in this fight flight state. Who can relax to have a bowel movement, right? And so, you know what? That's one of the things that I highly recommend is making sure that really good bowel movements. How do I do it? Is make probiotics for one, of course. And then I like every day I create a routine in the morning so that you can increase the flow. What you want to do is you actually want to wake up at a certain time. In Chinese medicine, between the hours of 5 and 7 a.m. is when your large intestine is the most active. So the large intestine, of course, meaning we want to have the bowel movement between those times. If you wake up at 9 o'clock, often people who wake up late, they're on a rush. They're like, oh, I got to get to work. So they jump in the shower, they take off. And to me, you're just totally missing the boat here because you're going into the day with waste in your body. That's when you're going to have headaches. That's when you're going to be more irritable. That's when you're going to start smelling more. When you've got waste in your gut, you don't have really good body odor. So there's a lot, you know what I'm saying? It's like people start smelling. So it's really important that you get the toxins out daily. And then the 4th way that I find how to get rid of belly fat, one of the fastest ways for me is let's get your mitochondria growing in your body. Mitochondria, not many people talk about mitochondria, but to me, mitochondria is like one of your best friends as you start aging because 10% of our body mass is made of mitochondria. These little organelles, in most of your cells to give you ATP and energy. And why do we need that? Because these mitochondria are going to help burn the fat off your belly. And the way you do that is by high intensive exercise. I love your name, Intensive Health. Right. Is that right? High intensity health, HIH. I love that because I truly believe in using your body to increase your ability to burn fat. And the only way you can really do that is to maintain your mitochondria. As we age, and why is it that men and women start getting skinnier legs and the fatter bellies is because you're losing muscle mass. They say about 50% of your muscle mass is lost by the time you're in your 60s. And when that happens, that's how disease starts. And did you know that the best way to reduce or prevent diabetes, type 2 diabetes, is to maintain your muscle? Because your muscle is where the sugar goes. When you've got high blood sugar, the muscle wants it most to reduce that blood sugar level. So let's say that you lose your muscle mass because you're not exercising enough. You're not eating enough protein and you're not eating enough amino acids that will help you build muscle and maintain your bone. And if that happens, what shrinks? Everything shrinks on you, your arms, your legs, and you think, oh, I'm getting skinnier as I'm getting older. But no, that's not true. You're becoming that skinny fat person where you have what's called sarcopenia. It's a very dangerous condition as you age. For me, that's the one thing I don't want is sarcopenia. So how do you do that? You exercise, you maintain your muscles, I'm a speed jumper. I love jumping rope. I don't know if you do that one, but that's my way of maintaining muscles in my body. Plus, I do a lot of quick, fast weightlifting. And weightlifting, it's standing up. Notice I'm standing up here, Mike?
Yeah, me too.
Like you are. Well, there's a reason. There's a reason why I stand up. The body's meant to move, and sitting is one of the worst things for your lower back. In Chinese medicine, just standing still with your feet apart, your shoulder width, is a way to tonify and strengthen your adrenal glands, strengthen your kidneys. So to me, whenever I do any kind of interview, I'm standing up. If you ever see my videos on Nature Secrets for my radio show, Wellness for Life, I have videos on my website. It's standing up, and I find that that's the way, not just that, it just kind of gets your brain going, sparking, and your energy just flowing, right? Don't you love it when you stand?
Totally. Yeah, I couldn't do it without it. I mean, when I sit, I remember in high school and college, just wanted to fall asleep because you're just so stagnant.
That's right.
So it's, fantastic information, Dr. Susanne. I knew we would have a lot to talk about. And, one of the things that we talk a lot about here at High Intensity Health is obviously the gut and the gut microbiome and why that's so important, which you tackled and you're very passionate about, but also muscle. And I think, while the gut is so important right now and everyone's talking about gut bacteria and gut hormones, and that's really cool and hot and sexy, we're forgetting about how important muscle is. And as you, stated, I mean, going back to 2004, New England Journal of Medicine did a report showing that the leg muscles become insulin resistant, and that is the primary cause of type 2 diabetes and prediabetes. So we need to maintain that lean muscle mass. So thank you so much for diving into so much detail there and sharing that passion. Now, you hit on a little bit of where the next question is going to go, and that's your morning routine and how the bowels move in the morning. And you're a busy working professional with a radio show and a book and a busy practice and a wife and a mother and so forth. So what makes you successful, and how do you structure your morning routine? What's your ideal morning?
I really believe that the way you're going to increase your longevity, and make sure that we're reversing our biological age, because I want us all to live as long as possible, and especially me, of course, because I've got so much to do and I love life. I find that routines are most important. So I find that routines create biological rhythm. The circadian rhythm has got to be set. So I always go to bed a specific time, and I wake up a specific time. I'm not all over the place. I want to get 8 hours of sleep. Now, everyone loves sleep, and we can talk so much about sleep, but I'm going to tell you about my morning routine. When I wake up, I do what's called my BBT, body balancing technique. It's a technique that I developed 10 years ago, combining Korean yoga and Qigong, and I learned from a Shaolin Kung Fu master a lot about how to move your energy in your body. So I created literally a 3-minute technique that I teach to my patients called BBT. And there are all these acupuncture points, and specifically the flow of what direction, where you're supposed to tap your body. And the flow of it is really the key. And I do that every morning. And then I go downstairs and I pop on the tea, water, tea. I love hot. And the reason why I do hot is that, like I said, in the early mornings from 5 to 7, your gut is most active. So I want to stimulate the gut, and warm water, not cold. Don't ever have a shake in the morning. I know a lot of your peeps love shakes because it's an easy thing. Well, I'd like you to put in this one little step. Get some hot tea, hot water, lemon juice, something like that. I don't drink any coffee or anything like that because I don't like stimulants whatsoever. But rooibos tea is one of my favorites, rooibos. So I drink that, and I'm doing it in a relaxed state. And what I want you to do is, people who have children, do it before they wake up. And when my little son was, a babe and going to school and all that, I would wake up earlier than him just so that I can have my own time, my own space. And then once I start drinking that tea or the hot water, boom, my body just wants to go and have a bowel movement. And you want to do it every single day. Remember, we've got to get those toxins out. When you get the toxins out, your brain's going to be clear. You've got more energy. You're less weight. You feel lighter. I mean, seriously, you can have a pound of poop coming out of you, right? So
right.
Really, really important that you get, and that's how I start my day. And after I have that bowel movement, I'm ready to jump in the shower and get ready to go. That's my true routine. And of course, I can't forget, after I do the tea, I have my green drink. I do have a green in the morning, and during my green drink is when I take all my supplements. We never got a chance to take all the supplements, but I take a lot. And if only I could show you my little supplement case with all the different supplements, because I truly believe that's the one limiting step that I don't want to affect the way my brain functions, the way I have energy, the way I have vitality and strength in my body. And I want to make sure that I get all those nutrients in, because if you see me at my office, it's nonstop. I see just about 100 patients a week, and it's just on one after another. So I need that. I need energy. I need to be restored. So that's what I do.
I love it. Well, it's clearly working. You have great energy. One of the most energetic persons we've had on the show here at 80 some odd episodes. So thanks for that. And I'm a whole food guy first, real food, but we take a lot of supplements too, because our food's not what it used to be. Even if you grow your own, and we're stressed, we're traveling, there's EMFs, there's toxins. So I'm a huge believer in supplements too. And my next question would be, Dr. Susanne, is what's your favorite supplement? Maybe something that you frequently recommend to people you can't live without. What is it and why?
That's a really hard question, because I take so many different supplements, so many. But what I would say that the one supplement that I love to take, and I've been taking a long time, is pycnogenol. Pycnogenol is pine bark extract. It is it's made by Horfag Manufacturing. It's done by Pycnogenol is a trademark name. And I like pine bark extract because there's several things that it does for my body. It is really great as an anti-inflammatory for allergies. Super, super antioxidant. It helps get rid of anything, and really great for brain function, increasing the blood flow to the brain. Also really important for building block of collagen. Collagen, which is muscle, right? Bone tissue. Really great for that. It's also helps when I was pregnant with my son, Cody, it helped me with my spider veins and varicose veins on my legs. I mean, it's incredibly powerful. It's non-teratogenic, which means even if you're pregnant, you can take it and it won't harm your baby. So pycnogenol I've been taking for about 20 years now. And it's one supplement I don't forget. It's also really great for preventing DVTs, deep vein thrombosis. When you're flying up in the air, take that together with nattokinase. So if I were to travel, that's one of the formulas I go with, and it's all over. And it's much more powerful than vitamin C as well as vitamin E, super antioxidant. So that's really I'd say one of my favorites.
Yeah, I love it. And you can't really get that from food. I mean, good luck going and chiseling off a piece of pine bark and trying to chew it. So that's a perfect way to get a supplement, that you're not going to get from food.
Good point.
It's really interesting. We could talk about lymph and stagnant blood flow and how that's so inflammatory, but, we forget about maintaining our peripheral circulatory system and lymphatic system. So that's why, some of those pine bark, and I know grapeseed extract and that oligomeric proanthocyanidin, I think it is OPCs, are so great for the venous system and lymph system. So thanks for sharing that. Now, if you were to bump shoulders with Barack Obama or a future president, maybe a congressman, and they turned to you and said, Dr. Susanne, as an expert in allergies and integrative functional medicine, what sort of lifestyle tips or strategies would you like me to know? Or the number one lifestyle tip or strategy would you like me to know so that I can maybe implement some sort of policy around that and make Americans healthier? What would you share with them in 30 seconds and why?
I would say that the most important thing that at least right now, in modern times, is actually mercury poisoning. Mercury poisoning, as well as Fukushima poisoning. What I mean by Fukushima is like the nuclear waste. So everyone's got to know, what? Whoever the president is, I'd say right now, 300 tons of nuclear waste is being dumped into our waters, and it's all coming here. It's all coming here because of the way the water currents are. And that means that our fish, sorry, I am seafood free. I don't eat fish anymore. I'm seafood free. Once in a while I'll have that wild salmon or the little sardines, which I really love because it's so high in RNA. But I'll tell you, I don't eat a lot of seafood, maybe 6 times a year, and that's about it. And that's because our waters are completely infested with mercury, strontium-90, cesium-137, uranium, you name it, iodine. So there's a lot of nuclear waste. So many people are now coming into my practice with leaky gut syndrome, secondary to nuclear waste toxicity. They have numbness in their tongue and all that. I know it's more than 30 seconds.
No, that's great.
But I'll tell you what, this is the problem of America today. Most biggest problem is the mercury. Now let's talk about mercury. It's not just, the mercury and the Fukushima. China and all of what they're doing with the coal, that they're using the coal for building and developing and all that is just ruining. They don't have any forms of laws in that country yet. And I want the president to start working and talking to the entire world. We need the UN to come in to play, not just America. This is a worldly problem. And when this is a worldly problem as big as it is, then we're all going to be sick. And when we have all sickness and where our future is completely at stake, and this is for our generations in the future, it's not going to be fixed in my generation. It won't be fixed in my son's generation. It will be fixed possibly in the future, maybe even 30, 40, 50 years down the line. But you got to start somewhere. You got to teach these people that what is going on around the world is what's killing us as a human species.
Fantastic. Well, Dr. Susanne, thank you so much for sharing that piece of advice and all the information that you covered in this show. And I'm sure you're going to have some folks that want to reach out to you, connect with you, learn more about your book. So what's the best online resources, websites where people can connect with you and learn more about what you're doing?
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I'd love to just send them to my website, drsuzanne.com, drsuzanne.com. Over there's a lot of videos and there's a lot of articles. You can also download free downloads and things that you can get. Remember, I told you about that swollen belly, list. It's right there too. And I've got my radio show that's from Radio MD and iHeart. If anyone, go to iHeart, look me up, Wellness for Life Radio. And I'm there every Friday. But you can also watch my videos because I tape a lot of it on my website.
Love it. Awesome. Dr. Susanne, keep up the great work. Thank you so much for coming on the show, and I hope you have a great day.
Thanks so much, Mike. You're awesome. I'm such a big fan of yours. And everyone, I just want to help you feel better, and make your day the best as it can. I really appreciate you and giving me the opportunity to serve you all. Thanks again.
Thank you.